What's up, Nerdyverse? I'm Daddy Louie, and in this video we're taking a look at the upcoming Kickstarter for Cybermancy, so stick around. Before we get started, if you're new to our channel and you want to see more content like this, start now by hitting the subscribe button and the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos. Cybermancy is an upcoming Kickstarter. The game is designed by Carl Cox. It is for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games take around 20 minutes to play. At its core, this game is essentially a living card game, or LCG. However, that title, I guess, is copyrighted, so they don't actually say that in this game. But what does that mean if you are not familiar? So what it means is separate from or different from how traditional card games, trading card games work. Trading card games, you buy blind packs and you mix together cards in your collection and make decks. Games like this, all of the cards that you get are the same in every single person's box, and you can create decks that are fair against one another without having to worry about who has what cards in their collection. So that's essentially kind of what this game is designed to be. The starter set that we're looking at today is a prototype. It comes with 2 different factions, the humans and the undead. The Kickstarter is hoping to unlock more factions, so there is hopefully more different things coming down the pipeline. But there are some mechanics in this game that are very unique that I've not seen in other games. And so I'm going to try and point those out to you as best I can. Like I said, remember this is a prototype, so some of the components will be different when you get your actual version from the Kickstarter, which is coming out very, very soon. So is this game any good? Well, let's go to the table and we will look at it and find out. So the front of the box art here is really, really cool. You've got some undead and some humans fighting some monsters and some robots. Monsters and robots are some of the factions that they hope to bring to the game later on, so it's cool to see them right here on the cover of the box. Inside we have a few different components that we're going to be using to play. First and foremost, we have our 2 decks of cards. You have the humans and the undead. In this game, once you get into the game and you start making your own decks, factions don't matter as far as combining the cards. So you can make a deck with all humans, all undead, or you can mix and match them together. There is no restriction for that. The core set here comes with 50 of each type. Decks are 30 cards, so there is some room for some customization or deck building. The rule book that I was given did include a couple of starter decks to start with, some deck lists, so that you could jump right into the game without having to worry about making a deck. You also have some health trackers, which is just in the form of using some cards. I personally don't like these. I never really have, regardless of the game that I've been playing, that I play. So right here, this would be 30. And then when you start losing life, you go 29, 28, 27, 26, and so on. I'd rather just use a dice or a dial. But, it is nice that they at least included something. You also have your RAM and your CPU power trackers. I'll explain this more in a minute, but it comes with 2. And then you have your RAM and your CPU decks. And then you have some tokens. The tokens are 2 different colors. You have red and green. Red is obviously bad, that's for damage and stuff like that, whereas green is like your buffs and things like that, and they're double-sided, so you have the same amount of each, which is nice, red and green. I don't know what will be included in the Kickstarter. That was just what was given to me in this copy. Let me first talk about a couple of the unique parts about this game that I've not seen in other games before we get into how we play. I will show you how to play very briefly, but the rules are quite simple once you start learning. But a couple of the things that are unique about the game. Let's look at one of the characters here. This character if you'll notice at the top, there are two different numbers. These are both summoning requirements or casting requirements that you need in order to play this card. So this blue in the top left corner, that is the CPU cost, and the green in the top right corner is the RAM cost. So in order to play this particular character here, you would need to use 4 CPU and 1 RAM in order to summon her or cast her onto the table. She is a 4/4. This is pretty standard here, 4 attack, 4 health, and then she has a keyword and an ability. Some cards do, not all of them do, however. And that's one of the things that I think is unique about this game, is the fact that there are 2 separate casting requirements in order to cast a card. So let's talk about those real quick, CPU and RAM. These decks are shared between the 2 players, so they will both draw from the same deck. And there are different numbers within these decks. So you have some 5s, 4s, 3, 2, and 1, and you have more 1s than anything else. I think it goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, so 6. And then there are 7 4s, 8 3s, 9 2s, and 10 1s. So that's the way that these decks are set up. So at the beginning of the game, these would be shuffled, and you and your opponent would draw from each of these, and you're going to share them. The other thing that's unique is how much you are allowed to cast on your turn. So what I mean by that is, at the beginning of the game, each player starts off with 1 RAM and 1 CPU on their power tracker. And then at the beginning of subsequent turns after that, they can increase one of these by 1. And that's it. So basically, you would need 4 on your CPU track and 1 on your RAM track in order to cast her. So even if she's in your starting hand and you have the RAM and CPU in your hand to play her, you would need to wait, let's see, 3 turns in order to cast her. Or 4 turns, actually, including your first turn. Because you need to get up to this 4. So turn 1, you'd be 1/1. Turn 2, turn 3, turn 4. So 4th turn. On your 4th turn, assuming you put all of your power into CPU, that is the most, that is the quickest that you would be able to summon her onto the table. So each game that you play, you're going to decide where you want to move up on this power track based on what's in your hand and what it is that you want to play. The final thing that I want to note is there are 2 lanes, so there's no defending in this game unless you have a character in your front line. When you cast a character or summon a character into this game, they get played in the main area unless told otherwise in their stuff down here. So they need to be moved into their front line, into your front line, in order to be defending. If you have nothing in your front line, then there is no defense. All of the damage can be directed directly at you, the player. Each player has 30 points, and the first person to get down to 0 loses the game. So let me set up a really quick game just to show you some of the basic mechanics, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. Now, when setting up a game, each player will draw 7 cards from their creature deck. You are allowed to mulligan as many cards as you'd like and then redraw back up. You can only do this 1 time, but it's nice that they included that as a rule in the game. And this information, these cards are hidden. Your opponent doesn't know. And I mention that because you then draw 5 each of the CPU and the RAM cards, and this is open information. You will play these face up on the table so that your opponent knows basically what your summoning abilities are. And you can also mulligan these, so you can put back any number that you want and redraw back up to the maximum hand size. Then you'd set each player to 1 RAM, 1 CPU, and the game would begin. The game takes place over rounds, and each round consists of 5 phases. So the first phase is the main phase, and this is where you summon and or you attack. And you do this with one creature. And this alternates back and forth, and you can keep doing it until both players pass. So the first thing that I would want to do is summon a creature. As you can see, I can do no such thing because I have nothing in my hand that is 1/1 casting cost. So essentially I would have to pass to my opponent. In the next turn, however, I could bump my ram up to 2, and then I could play this ghoul right here, Dale the Ghoul. And to do that, I could discard 1 CPU and 2 RAM to do that. And that would allow me to play him. He has the ability that says frontline, which puts him in my frontline for defense. I would then pass to my opponent, who could do something, and then it would go back to me. Now, if I had another 1/2 cost creature, I could play that. I don't, but if I did, I could. Now I can attack if I want to, and attacking works like most card games that you may have played. You would exhaust or turn sideways your creature and then throw the damage at your opponent. If he has nothing in his front line, you can either attack a creature directly or you can attack the opponent. So if he has nothing in his front line and nothing that I want to destroy, I would just throw 3 damage at him and he would be down to 27. And that's essentially how that phase works. You go back and forth until both you and your opponent pass and do nothing. The next phase is discard. So you would discard any destroyed creatures or used power cards. The next phase after that is draw. You draw 1 summoning card, 1 card from your deck, and then a power card from each of the power decks. And then refresh by making everything unexhausted or turned vertical. And then you advance the power marker to whatever you choose to do, whether it be RAM or CPU. And then initiative passes to the next player, and that's the game. You go back and forth, completing these phases, summoning monsters, using your dual RAM and CPU in order to summon these creatures to bring your opponent down to 0 health. One last thing I want to do real quick is show you the art on some of these cards and some of the names of the characters. They've done a really, really good job. I dig the art, and I love that the factions are interchangeable, so I can get some zombies and some humans going at the same time. But look at how cool the art is. The whole structure of the card is just really neat. There's Achilles. Some really, really cool characters that they've created for this game. The one thing that kind of bums me out a little bit is that there's no flavor text. In games like this, typically sometimes you would see some very small font in the bottom of some of the cards that had some flavor text about the characters. Maybe that's something they can add in later, but I really wanted to see some of that. Like here's Lagartha. You could definitely have some really cool text down there at the bottom, and it's just missing, unfortunately, which is kind of a bummer. But other than that, I really, really like the art and the style of this game overall. But is it good? This game is good. It's a lot of fun to play, especially if you enjoy games like this, of that genre. I love TCGs, trading card games, Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, but it is very expensive to play because in order to be competitive, in order to even have a chance against your friends, you have to invest the same amount of money and the same amount of time into it as they do. Card games like this that are all-in-ones, you don't have that problem. You just need strategy in order to be able to play and win. The rules are simple enough that you can teach this to your kids. It's not complicated at all, but it's unique enough in its mechanics and its different themes, I guess, from other games that it would keep an experienced gamer interested. So look forward to this Kickstarter in just a couple of days. I will leave links to all of their stuff in the description below. Thank you to the creators for giving me an opportunity to check it out, and I hope that you guys enjoy it as much as I did. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps us out a lot. Make sure that you share it with your family, friends, and your nerdy communities. If there are any games out there that you would like to see on our channel, just let us know in the comments down below. We do read them, and we love to interact with you guys. If you have any videos you would like featured on our page, you can hit us up on one of our many social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Circle of Nerds. Also, don't forget that we have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday called The Cosmic Disaster Show. You can find that right here on YouTube or anywhere that you enjoy listening to podcasts. And for an extra bit of love and affection to us here at Circle of Nerds, please consider checking us out over on Patreon at patreon.com/circleofnerds. Anyway, guys, that's all from me. I will see you in the next video.